Muy buenas tardes a todos. Soy Emilio.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emilio Bouza. I'm the chair of the Foundation Scientific Council. And before we start, I'd like to thank you for choosing to spend this nice sunny afternoon in Madrid with us. So thank you very much. And today we are attending a session which has a long-standing tradition. It's the 17th edition of our partnership with Springer Nature. For these 17 years, basically what we have done in this collaboration is, the company proposes a series of themes. The Scientific Council selects amongst those themes the one that we think is the most timely, the most interesting, and the most challenging at the current moment. And I think today's title speaks for itself. Artificial intelligence, digital twins, and especially applications of this technology to human health and medicine. And so I think that we are going to learn a great deal, starting with a definition of the term first, which I hope we will manage. And then, of course, we want to learn more about the applications and the changes that it might entail for human health, this revolution that we're all facing, and which we're all somewhat afraid of. I think part of what they're going to do this evening, I think, will be to provide some comfort as well. So the two people who've organized this are Soledad Santos Suárez, who's the Director of Scientific Services for Europe, the company, and Erika Pastrana, both of whom are old friends of our foundation. She's now the Vice Chair of Nature Research, which I understand manages 40 different scientific publications all over the world. And so I'm going to give them the floor so they can introduce the speakers, and so that we can start this session and have enough time for questions at the end. So I want to thank the speakers, the company, and all of you for being here. So go ahead, Soledad. Good afternoon, and thank you very much, and welcome to the 17th science debate that we've jointly organized between the Areces Foundation and the Springer Nature Group. As Emilio has said, we've had this partnership for 17 years, and from Springer Nature, we're very grateful both to the director of the foundation, Mr. Raimundo Fernando Pérez Itorra, and its head of communication, Mr. Manuel Azcona, for their trust on us. And we're very grateful to the Scientific Council or Committee, which selects some groundbreaking topics each year, which help us disseminate knowledge about scientific research to the general public. And we want to thank Professor Medina and Bouza for having selected this particular topic. Also, today we'd like to remember Professor Federico Mayor Zaragoza, who died a few months ago. And in the years that he presided the scientific committee, we worked closely with him. We'd also encourage you to read the obituary that was published in Nature this same week. In Springer Nature, our motto is advancing discovery. And we might say that in our company's DNA, we have providing to the scientific and non-scientific readers the advances made by researchers all over the world. We're committed to do two things: focus on topics of particular interest, like the ethical development of AI, and two, and I'm sorry about that microphone. Cojo ese.
Como decías, para nosotros.
So I was saying it's a real privilege for us to be able to continue this partnership with Ramón Areces Foundation. At Spring in Nature, for over 10 years, we've been developing AI tools that will enable us to accelerate the dissemination of knowledge. In 2019, we were the first to publish a book written exclusively by machines. And in 2023, the first book developed with an AI system supervised by the authors who contributed their expertise in the field and supervised the drafting. We believe that AI will not just significantly improve the speed and quality of our scientific progress, but will also help us be more efficient in the processes of reviewing and editing publications. Those of you who attend these joint events will know of our interest in the progress of personalized medicine. In 2019, we spoke about the challenges of increasingly targeted and precise treatments, not just from the point of view of the efficacy of the treatment, but also from a health economics point of view, because what's the use of personalized medicine if it's only available to the fortunate few? And some years before that, in 2019, before AI became a trending topic and so prevalent in our lives, we were already discussing in the same hall how this technology might help healthcare systems and what ethical challenges it might raise and how it would help us move towards truly personalized medicine. And today, just 6 years later, we are moving closer to an even more groundbreaking development, the computational development of advanced AI, together with the tremendous expertise acquired over the years with the operation of physical and biological systems, digital twins, that is, as we will hear from all the speakers, virtual replicas of an object or biological system that will enable us to understand and study how these objects or systems would behave under certain conditions. The combination of these virtual twins or digital twins with advanced AI capabilities are enabling predictive analysis and the monitoring of all kinds of processes in real time. As we will hear from Professor Francisco Herrera, these developments will help us better understand the recommendations of AI, facilitating our interaction with these systems. And in biomedicine, digital twins are already being used to simulate organs and create virtual projections which are, for example, able to predict heart response to a treatment, as we'll hear from Professor Trayanova. And Professor Guido Caldarelli will explain that thanks to the application of complex network theories, you can simulate how drugs will interact in a particular patient or its digital twin, and therefore avoid the wrong treatments. And finally, our final speaker will speak about how these AI technologies can be combined with smart electronics, wearables like contact lenses or bracelets or T-shirts, which combined with other data sources will enable us to monitor our health 24/7 and develop real individualized medicine. Thank you very much to Paco, Guido, Luigi, and Natalia for traveling all the way to Madrid to share your expertise with us. And finally, I would like to once again thank Erika Pastrana, Vice Chair of Nature magazine, for agreeing to moderate this event. It's a real pleasure and a real honor to have you participate in this session. Thank you very much, everyone, and I hope you will enjoy the lectures and the discussion.
Buenas tardes a todos.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with all of you. I hope you will find this very stimulating. 2 hours of discussions about and a glimpse into the future of medicine. It's a real pleasure for me to introduce and moderate this panel. Once again, we've been partnering with Ramón Areces Foundation, as my colleague Soledad has said, quite a few years now, many years in fact, and it's always a pleasure to bring science to society, to the general public, but also, as Sole has said, we will have a discussion at the end. We want to hear your questions, your comments. We want you to participate and benefit from the opportunity to talk directly with the great experts that have joined us today. I'm going to briefly introduce the topic because we'll go into a lot more detail with our 4 experts, and then I will introduce our first speaker. As Soledad has already mentioned, this concept of digital twins. It's a virtual replica of any type of physical system. It could be any type of system. And one of the main characteristics is the constant connection between the virtual model and the physical model. There's constant communication with data being received from the physical system and direct inputs from the digital model to help in decision making in the physical model. In general, the concept of digital twins was defined in 1960 by the Space Agency, NASA, and they used a digital model, a model of the Apollo 13th, so they could determine how to solve problems that were happening in real time when the Apollo was in flight. And that concept was then coined as digital twins in 2005, and since then we have seen it move from the industrial setting for manufacturing of objects, where the object is designed and projected end-to-end with a digital twin. And then from 2010, we started to see more real applications in biomedicine. And that's the field that we're going to talk about today, because the future has tremendous opportunities so that digital twins, these virtual replicas of our organs, our diseases, or our whole body, can impact how it is treated. And my colleague said that the great hope is personalized medicine, to be able to generate a real-time replica or twin of the heart, the lung, the tumor that is affecting us in our circumstances and in our lives. And so we'll talk about that in this session. And we have 4 speakers who are going to be very complementary, because it's a very complex topic and there are multiple dimensions involved in the design, operation, and development of a digital twin. First, of course, an essential component is AI, because that's what's going to help us in decision-making, because of the capabilities of this technology to absorb data in real time and provide decision support. And secondly, you have to have sensors. You have to obtain data from the patients. And for that, you need very smart sensors that can capture every aspect of that organ or that body we're trying to model. And we need mathematical and physical models so that we can interpret the biological models. As we all know, biology is extremely complex, and so we need physics and mathematics to help us interpret and create reliable models of the underlying biology or physiology. And finally, we want to see, and we will see together with our experts, real examples in which progress is already being made and how it's been used in the clinical setting and what things are happening already. And so without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, so we can start to see the progress that has been made in this field. And the first speaker will be Professor Francisco Herrera Triguero, and he's a professor from the Computational Science and Artificial Intelligence Department of the University of Granada. He's also the director of the Andalusian Inter-University Data Science and Computational Intelligence Institute. Throughout his career, he's combined his academic work with research projects in fields such as soft computing, data mining, and decision-making. And so he's going to talk about AI and its contribution to digital twins. Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Springer Nature and the Ramón Areces Foundation for inviting me to take part in this event. And with Luigi, Guido, and Natalia, and so it's an absolute pleasure to share this session with them and then hold a discussion with them. My talk, the first one, will be in Spanish. And what I will do is talk about the interactions of AI and digital twins, which is fundamental in all the fields in which they're being used, and then interaction with humans, who are the ones that will have to make the decisions in all those areas where you need human intervention due to the risks involved. And so it's a brief presentation. I have these 6 points: introduction of digital twins, to talk about the interaction with AI after that, and 3 aspects that are important: the AI-human interaction in decision-making, especially in the medical field, which is a high-risk field where humans have the last word, and how this partnership is being shaped. And then an aspect which I think is also crucial in order to get to that collaboration or that interaction, and that is what we call explainability or explainable AI, so that users, experts, doctors in medicine can understand why certain suggestions are being made by the AI model. As for digital twins, as you've heard and as you will hear throughout this session from all the speakers, we are speaking about a virtual replica of any physical system, and that will enable us to simulate, analyze, and optimize that system. And that, combined with AI, will help us develop predictive and analytical capabilities. We will be able to monitor a lot of the variables involved in real time, and using AI, we'll be able to anticipate developments with what we might call predictive maintenance. We'll be able to detect any abnormalities in the system that will help us make decisions, as well as interact, as we will see in some of the other presentations. And the traditional example that is always used lately is that of a smart city, where what we're trying to do is simulate the urban environment and then interact in order to develop this twin and look at aspects such as traffic congestion, water supply, energy supply, and all of it, of course, data-driven. We will need the data, and we'll talk about that throughout the presentations, in order to design and interact with this digital twin. And that brings us to a scenario which I'd like to describe in the medical field. And the question is, why is the design of a digital twin different in the medical field? In this slide, I would like to show you the design cycle of a digital twin for ongoing monitoring of a patient with a particular disease or for a personalized treatment. In a multimodal environment where you want to have a connection with the patient and all the information available, first of all, we would have, as you can see there on the right, all the variables, all the information that is available from all the data provided by electronic devices and sensors. And Luigi will be talking about that in detail, and data on things like nutrition and sleep habits and everything that has to do with wearables, all those wearable devices that will help us. Also aspects like social aspects, education level, social network, and all of it, all of this data. And the microphone has just died again. And so we have this typical diagram of a system which we can use in order to obtain a digital twin, which will establish an interaction so that we can predict a lot of the health parameters of this patient, this individual, whom we have all this data, as well as to deploy any precision medicine that might be required, which is the objective we're moving towards with this combination of digital twins and artificial intelligence. But of course, there are issues, as you can imagine, and we might ask ourselves, what
un brazo artificial.
So an artificial arm, this is just a very small part of the human body, and the design of an artificial arm, of a virtual arm, of a robotic arm, has a lot of implications in terms of all the sensors that you need, a hi-fi reproduction of the behavior of the arm.
E integración de todo el sistema de control. Pero es que cuando...
And if we want to have a proper interaction between that human and the artificial arm, we need to have maximum precision, we need to be able to reduce latency and continuous learning. It is extremely complex. It's a lot harder to have a digital twin of any part of the human being than of a physical object like an engine, as I showed you in the previous slide, or a city, because of the complexities of biological systems. But actually, we can take that to the next step or level. If we look at the actual human body, that's 10 to the 14 cells. That's a huge number of cells. And there are studies that tell us that about 70 to the 9th cells die every day, and that throughout our lives, every 7 years, we could say we have a complete exchange of our cells. We could not even speak about a digital twin for a lifetime. We would have to renew that digital twin every so often. And so when you're working with digital twins, you have to take into account the complexity of the system and the data. And Luigi Caldarelli will talk to us about this.
¿Se escucha? Bueno, intento... No, ahora vuelvo a escuchar.
Okay, sound is back. I was saying that Guido Caldarelli will be speaking to us about the interaction of complex systems, and Natalia will talk to us about a particular application within the complexity of the human body.
Nuevos retos continuamente.
And there's constantly new challenges emerging and a whole range of AI applications for diagnosis, healthcare, triage. Specifically, there's been a tremendous explosion in the use of AI these last few years. And there's this paper from a couple of years ago about ChatGPT, and in these 2 years, there's been a huge progression, and large language models are now part of our understanding of AI, and we're constantly interacting with these models. And recently, with that DeepSeek, that breakthrough through Chinese model, which is much smaller and more affordable, it has completely revolutionized the whole field. And there's all kinds of official statements in the US and in Europe about the planned enormous investments in AI. And so this has completely changed our lives over the years. And if we look back at what our life was like 70 years ago, now we have cell phones, which we use for almost everything except speaking on the phone. And they're filled with AI and virtual assistants and access to social media from the mobile phone, and you can have translation on the mobile phone. And when you get in a car, we don't have self-driven cars here yet, but in other countries they are already available. But cars are becoming increasingly equipped with AI, from automatic transmissions to the electronics on board. And if we look at medicine, there's also been a tremendous transformation in practically every field of medicine, in diagnosis, treatment, imaging. So there's been huge breakthroughs in the last couple of years, and especially, of course, there's the development these last 2 years. And recently, in Nature Medicine on January 6th, a study was published analyzing the behavior of a language model, NetPalm, MedPalm, designed by Google for the medical field specifically. And in the studies they did in the medical field, the precision was 86%, which is much higher than that of any medical student. When they analyzed and compared the results of PalmMed with those of a GP, when they checked the answers, they found that 65% of those answers were more precise, more accurate than those of a average GP.
Oírlo sin interrupciones y verla.
We're having a problem with the sound and the slides and the software, and so apologies. We're going to have a 2-minute break so that they can reset the whole system, and then we'll start again. I'm really sorry to interrupt. I was hoping that you'd be able to finish, but it's just not going to let us. So let's have a quick break, and then we'll continue in a couple of minutes.
Bien, el sonido, sí, ¿no? Se escucha bien. Bueno.
Anyway, let's go on. I was saying that in this new era of AI that we've been immersed in for the last 2 years with language models, the most recent study in Nature Medicine shows the incredible level of the language models, especially this Google's specific language from the Palm language that is adapted especially to the medical field, where it is getting a general knowledge that for specialists is better than the diagnosis than a general physician provided for any disease, which proves that we're getting to a point when the use of AI, it's been used for some years now, but it helps the physicians take decisions. That's going to be key. And therefore, we can even ask ourselves, where are we heading? Are we heading towards an AI or human intelligence? Or are we going to have a robot doctor? Reading an interview made by a student, a resident of radiology, he said something interesting. He said that the Nobel Prize winner, Geoffrey of this year, Geoffrey Hinton, given to him because of his discovery of AI, in 2016 predicted that in 5 years, radiologists were going to be outperformed by AI. And that prediction, according to Arjun Buju, the resident, said that there's many doomers that were the reason why there's not so many radiologists anymore as needed. Students of medicine did not choose the specialty of radiology because of that doom. And we are facing a historic labor shortage. AI cannot really replace humans in any task, especially in the medical field, but rather it's a supplement. The answer is no, we're not going to have a robot that does the prescription, nor the diagnosis. But if we're talking about human intelligence or artificial intelligence, there's going to be a collaboration, a co-intelligence, and I'm going to talk about that precisely. And then I'm going to go into the details of the situation where we're going to start working on AI in decision-making made by humans, human AI decision-making. In all risk scenarios, according to the regulations of the European Union presently, in all of the risk scenarios, it's humans who have to take decisions. In front of the classical model, where we have medical experts in AI, it is not acceptable to have autonomous decisions in scenarios of risk, but rather we're going into a scenario where doctors are assisted by AI. And where experts, with their expert knowledge, with their intuition, with their clinical wisdom, which is the innate know-how that sometimes it's difficult to explain, is going to be assisted by AI with recommendations, and from those recommendations, maybe they're going to take decisions. That is a new world where we are talking about over-reliance on AI that sometimes may lead us to mistakes, or maybe also we may under-rely on AI, and there's an important problem. We will need to be very careful about that in the next few years. As I said earlier, we're not heading towards the duality human or AI. Recently, the term co-intelligence was used, but first of all, I'd like to talk about the term. We all know the Centaurus, right? The centaur is duality. Greek mythology, it's half human, half horse, that group together the dexterity and the precision and intelligence of humans and the strength and speed and endurance of horses. That was the ideal warrior. Well, this term, centaur, was proposed by Garry Kasparov in the cooperation between humans that are great chess players with machines that are playing chess. And presently, several authors have talked about that center. Actually, there's a book entitled Co-Intelligence, published by Ethan Mollick from the United States, analyzing the interaction between humans and machines. Ethan Mollick approached it in the following way. When I got in 2023 to my class, I realized that my students didn't ask in class. So my reaction was, why is it that you're not asking any more questions? And the answer is, well, we do have ChatGPT. So we asked ChatGPT our doubts. So he studied, together with his students, the future collaboration models. He talks about the doctor center as the delegation of tasks in the medical field, allowing for delegating and taking the decisions. And we can talk about doctor center and doctor cyber that are co-creating. In the future, we're going to have technical teams to debate and discuss diseases. And on the table, we're going to have an intelligent and a smart system that is going to also interact in the debate and the decision taking, he says. On this scenario, a very important aspect, apart from the safety, obviously, is explainability, that it has to be explainable. We're going to be assisted by smart machines everywhere, finances, health, education, so on. But there's something which is essential, which is that humans, in order to interact with machines, with smart systems, a human needs to understand the reason for that suggestion of the smart system, and that is what we call explainability, XAI. And it can be defined from several concepts. This is a definition that some of us proposed some years ago in 2020 that is established in the literature nowadays. We combine the idea of audience and understanding. When you explain a system, it needs to be understandable. And it needs to be understandable but by the designers, by the experts in AI, but also by doctors, physicians who are using it, or by patients. They need to understand the suggestions that are being made, so that's different. So this is something that is still open. We've been advancing on the mathematical model of explainability, but mathematicians explain that when you develop mathematical expressions with those of us that are expert on AI are comfortable, but other experts don't agree with that. So now we're going through a transition time between the mathematical modeling of explainability and the way we need to explain that to the users. And that leads us to this model, which is the model that we're heading towards, which is the model of interaction between human and a smart system. And in the medical field, it's doctors and Tau that will get the recommendations of AI and will interact with the digital twins so that eventually they take decisions together. Finally, 3 conclusions, very briefly. Number 1, going back to the LLMs, presently they're very interesting. They're striking. AI is associated to language models presently. And we are seeing explosion times. Everybody talks about language models, but now it's very new. The transformers were developed in 2017. So this is a new technology. We're presently having many problems, and the advancement in interaction with medicine, the models are getting a better quality more and more. And we have the challenge of contextualizing, where we're talking about digital twins. For instance, in the heart field, we have small language models specific for the heart field, not for all of the medicine or for all of the fields of society. We need to advance in that collaboration and integration between the doctor and the system so that in the future, actually soon, we go to the physician's office so that we have both the doctor and the smart system, the screen, where there's an interaction between the smart system and the doctor. And obviously, very important, data privacy. anonymity and anything related to the privacy of the user needs to be guaranteed. And that leads me to this idea of doctor-centered. Eventually, we have a human that takes decision assisted by an AI system or agent, and with the explanation, the explainability that they need in order to understand the reason for the suggestions of the AI, the doctors are going to be able to take better decisions and get a better diagnosis. We're not talking about replacing doctors, not at all. We're not talking about doctors being replaced. No, no. They are not replaceable. Rather, we are talking about the collaboration between humans and AI, a doctor who is always going to be collaborating with AI systems. And this takes me back to the beginning of my presentation. Digital twins are fundamental elements that connect AI with all of the information we have as humans in any fields. They allow us to monitor continuously the patient's health. They allow us to have personalized treatments in an unprecedented way, to have an analysis of the efficacy of treatments and the design of new drugs and the interaction of new drugs so that we can advance in this field. An example is the COVID-19 vaccination that was developed probably thanks to the collaboration between AI, digital twins, and the technology that we had for the design of this drug. This will lead us to this interaction that will give us a better health, a better care, and a cost reduction. That's also very important. That is to say, the junction of digital twins, AI, and doctors that are not going to be replaced, by the way, is going to help us improve in the medical field. That's all. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Professor Herrera. I'm really so thankful for the fact that you were able to resume after this little pause. Thank you all also for your patience. And now we're going to give the floor to the second speaker, who is Professor Guido Caldarelli, who works at the Department of Molecular Sciences and Nanosystems of the Venice University in Italy. And also, he is the director of the Institute of Complex Systems of the National Council of Research in Italy. Guido is a physician and an Italian researcher that has contributed significantly to the study of complex systems and network science. He specialized in the use of statistic physics in order to understand the structures and dynamics of networks, including social systems, economic, and biologic systems. So without further ado, I'm going to give the floor to Professor Caldarelli. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to apologize because even if I understand Spanish, but I'm awful at speaking Spanish.
We Italians think that this is Spanish, so I would like to avoid that. And so, thanks for the introduction. Again, apologies for switching to English. Tenemos a entender que es una réplica. Digital twins are una réplica virtual, no? Okay. But what do you mean with a copy? So that's the problem. That's the thing I would like to discuss and talk to you about. So one point, if you allow me to step back a little bit and explain why I'm here talking about digital twins, is because digital twins are the obvious outcome of one feature of the world we're living in, so the immense production of data. And as you probably know, I believe we live a similar life in Italy and Spain. If you have kids going to school and you have WhatsApp, no, there is the WhatsApp of the parents. No? And every second there are several messages about what's going on in the classroom of your kids. If you have two kids, twice that. And if you extend a little bit what's going on, I don't know if you have a pointer or not, but I mean, I just move. This is an old picture, by the way, so now it's even worse than that. But every minute of every day in our life, there are thousands of packs that are going around both on Amazon. There are thousands of pictures that are uploaded in Instagram, tens of thousands, I believe, of any other information that we share with the people. And if I am not wrong, there are 41 millions of messages on WhatsApp every minute, every day. So the total amount of information we are producing and distributing in the world is such that every year we double that. So imagine from Neolithic, the painting on the cave, to up to now, all the information stored in bits. Well, next year it will be twice as that. Okay, so it's massive amount. So how can we get rid of unwanted information and focus on what we want to do, what we want to study, would like to know about things? So at that point, enter complexity. Is another object. I need to define complexity in a while, in a few seconds. So imagine in our brain we have neurons. We have the brain. The brain is composed by neurons. But those one neuron think, well, nobody knows, but probably not. A neuron exchanges just electric discharge with other neurons. But if you put all these neurons together, then you have thinking of people. So the brain becomes something different. You have your own personality. You are in a crowd, and probably what you do in the crowd is different what you do as a person. When you take a computer, okay, you know probably how it works, but you connect all computers together, you have social networks, people exchanging ideas, new things happen. So essentially, when you put many things together, something strange and new comes out. This is the theory of complexity. Smart physicist Hawking, probably you know, it's also known in general culture. If you look at The Simpsons, for example, you might have known Hawking say that more or less we understood what's going on as a physicist for the inner particles, the small particles, the fundamental laws. So we know how the bricks of this world are done, are made, but we don't know how these bricks are put together. We know the bricks, but we don't know, the plan to build this auditorium that is different from the plan to build a stadium, a swimming pool, a house. Okay, so we know the bricks, we're lacking architecture. So how things together make something new? Okay, so the mathematics of that, mathematics and physics are bad words. I know that everybody get worried or asleep, things like that. But okay, we'll be very fast on that. Many things means many elements. Imagine you put these elements on a piece of paper. Piece of paper like this one, as vertices, and some interact, some do not. And whenever there is an interaction, you just put an arrow. Imagine that this is very simple. Imagine you can do something a little more complicated, and you go much more complicated than that. Imagine that this is, for example, a model on how people collaborate. So these are actors, for example, and you put a line between them if they play in the same movie, okay? So, they reciprocally play in the same movie, so that's okay. But imagine these are persons, and the line means, okay, do a phone call. So there is a difference between who makes the phone call and who received the phone call. No, if you're engaged when you're young, no, you have to call. No, it's me calling you. So it's something important at that point. And it's important also in other systems. Okay, so let's move now to the digital twins. As it was remembered in the introduction, the nice introduction, so thank you about that. This is something that appeared the first time with Apollo 13. Apollo 13, Houston, we have a problem, no? So there's something went bad. These people were in trouble. These people were risking their lives. So on the Earth, they had to reproduce what, if you saw the movie, it's obvious what I'm talking about. They had to reproduce the ship on Earth, and okay, now this is your ship, you are there, and try to find a solution to bring those guys back here. It worked, and so it's a good start for digital twin. So, but what is the idea? The idea is that this technology is also somehow a way to keep track on the connectivity, so to keep track on what's going on inside the system and show that to stakeholders. So in the case of health, could be, okay, this is the part of your body we are studying, and we would like to be accountable. We would like to show you what we're doing. Okay, so you can check and see what's going on there. If the situation changes, you may change some little element, and still this is good. So it's a very good replica, okay? But we have to understand what a replica means in a while. Again, you can change parts, so it's modular, and it leaves a trace of what has done. Why I took this medicine? Was necessary? Yes, it was necessary, because there it shows that it has an effect. So it seems good. Okay. What's important to say? This is one of the first paper I could find about digital twins in the scientific community. There is one important thing. Digital twins are good because they can tame the emergence of new unpredictable behaviors. So everything is under control. Well, it's exactly the opposite. You would like to keep track of what comes out. So you would like to keep track of the unpredictable. So it's even more difficult, even more powerful than these colleagues thought. Okay, so what is the point? We need a digital twin, but we need also complexity. So digital twins is a model, is a very powerful and important model of one part of our body, for example, and this is what we're talking about. But we cannot put possibly anything, all the information we have in this replica, because otherwise it would be as complex as the object. There is, perdona, I don't know how to pronounce, there is the Argentinian writer, Borges. Okay, so what is the use of a map that is big as the city? There's no use, no? Okay, so we have to choose carefully what is inside our replica. Okay, so this is a model. It must use the digitalization instruments that we have, of course. It must be that good that reproduces the emergence of new behavior. So this is quite a challenge. This is what I would like to talk about. Okay, so let me give you just a tiny example of the rules. So let's go in the direction of explainable. So what's going on for real? So what is the complexity? Which are the patterns that I can use? So let's play a little game. This is a strange object. It's a network. It's a simple network. Well, not that simple. Technically, for those of you who know, it's a bipartite network. So you have vertices, parts of two kinds, yellow and green, okay? And the connection goes just and only from green to yellow. There's no links between the green, no links between the yellow. What does it mean? What is the replica for? It's us. It's a very, very, strange replica of us. But imagine that these yellow circles are people. It's your acquaintances, your friends, okay? And then you have a 1, 2, and 3 that, for example, are supporter of Real Madrid. And 2 and 5 also like to go to the restaurant every evening, okay? And 4 and 5 support Atletico. Okay, but 5 still wants to go to the restaurant with the other one. So you try, after a while, to collect all these things. You put together, you draw links between things they like to do, green, and people, yellow. And at the end, what do you obtain? You obtain a link, a map of people that is as precise as many connection you considered. So, for example, you see the 1, 2, and 3 have something in common, that 2 and 5 have something in common, and so on and so forth. But maybe, possibly, also things can be connected, because if the same people made exactly the same two things, well, maybe these things are similar. Maybe they like skiing, maybe they like playing football. So they like sports, essentially. So skiing and football could be similar. And this is a way, what is called technically, to profiling people. When you, probably you have Netflix or other services of this kind, you finish a series, you finish a movie, and then these companies are just proposing you something new. And typically that's good. That's exactly what you want to see. Why? Well, how do they know? What is this intelligence there? But there's no intelligence, they're just profiling you. There are millions of users worldwide, and 10,000 saw exactly what you just saw, and they also saw this new for you series of movie. So very likely you will like. Okay, so this is how it works. Okay, why I'm talking about that? This is a mechanism that has been used since tens of years in our community to spot patterns, to spot things that are in common. And one of the things that Kwanil Go, a colleague from Korea, Laszlo Barabashi, and the other guys that are listed there, applied and published on PNAS is, okay, why don't we do that for diseases? So we took a disease sometimes because our cells are not functioning properly. So on the right, you see the part of our DNA that might be malfunctioning, okay? And when this happens, well, they create diseases. And then you see on the left. So the same color is the same class of diseases. So this is to help the reader. But you see that the malfunctioning of certain genes produces may produce the diseases you see on the left. In the same way I showed you before, you can make a map, this is comorbidity maps, of diseases that for every one of us is different, so you can do a personalized study on that. And you can say, well, okay, if you have this kind of cancer, you might like to develop the same in the future. So it's maybe to change habits, it's maybe worth to control the production of these proteins in your DNA and avoid you developing such diseases. And of course, you may also have a quantitative way to connect the diseases with each other. Okay, I will skip that, but it's essentially the same thing. The previous one was a map, a comorbidity map, and this is a map of the genome. Okay, so how can we use all this information in the few minutes that are left? I want to show the next slides. Well, there are many things that you have to take into account. I'll be back on the replica thing. There is artificial intelligence, there is all this mathematical machinery, but the problem is what you put in the replica, what you put in the digital twin. The more you put, the more it's precise, of course, but the more you put, the less it's usable. That's a price to pay. I mean. So what you put and what you would like to do? Well, you would like, for example, this is our proposal, to reduce the number of parameters you are considering. And this can be done by considering just heart, brain, pulmons, like I was saying in the introduction. So just one part of the body. But the body is a whole. You can't really cure one part and forget about the rest. So how can you put the rest inside? So this is the trick. You can characterize under which condition this is possible. In other condition might not be possible. Okay, so digital twins is good, but you have, to draw the boundaries of the activity you would like to do with that. And also you would like to be transparent. You would like to show essentially to the patient and to the other people what you put in the model, what you obtain, and which are the cause and effect of things that you have to do. It might be that having your DNA scheme in front of me, I may sort out which is the best medicine for you. It seems to be okay. Maybe it wasn't okay at the end, but I mean, there is a trace of why this has been done. So digital twins offer also this accountability part that I believe for ethical reasons, for legal reasons is very important. Okay, so one suggestion is we need several digital twins, probably and possibly. So restrict as much as possible. So don't want to consider all the other parameters around and study just a few cells of your body, what they're doing. And this is your first digital twin. Then you might like to consider, okay, let's take all the other cells around, let's make other digital twin, and let's consider another digital twin at a larger scale somehow, and let's see. Let's see what's going on there. And once you pass, I want to be fast and not to use all my time in explaining that. Once we do that, we are on the path of complexity, because when you change the scale, when you change the how to say, the strength of the microscope with which you are looking at a particular system in our body, you may see also the development of the emergence of new properties that probably you cannot observe when you study just a single cell. It's like the brain. So one neuron has life of a cell, discharges of electricity up, back and forth. But when you see an area of the brain with many neurons, you start to see some functionality. When you see the whole, you see that this is a thinking object. This is the place where we think, where we create our cautions, it's us, essentially, okay? And this you cannot spot at a single level. On the other hand, if you take at a general level, probably you don't understand what's going on. So passing from one level to another, this is the first recipe I would like to suggest in order to use digital twins. And of course, at the same scale, you have different organs. You have the heart, you have the pulse, you have the brain at the same level, and they're interacting, at least because there is blood passing in all, the same blood is passing in all of them, but much more than that, of course, okay? So while you can have a chain of digital twins from the lower level to the upper level, you may also have a series at the same level of digital twins for the various parts of your body, okay? And then possibly a digital twins that, like an orchestra director, is trying to make sense of what the different parts are doing and how they are interacting. Okay, so this is just a different and complementary view of the things I would like to tell you about digital twins. Let me just pass very briefly to something that probably is of minor interest, is my activity in the field. One specific study in which I was involved in recent years is the study of the orofacial and mandibular system, so how teeth develop, especially in the pediatric age. And believe it or not, there is a whole amount of data available, essentially angles in the part of our mouth when we develop that grow at different speed and interact one with each other. You may use all these data analysis and network analysis to make some sense of the interaction between them. This is a truly complex system, so things happen and it's difficult to point one specific reason for which some disease develop in our mouth. But I mean, this is one part I'm working on. I just published a book recently on system orthodontics. This seems quite a strange topic. I would like to stop here, maybe with a few seconds in advance from the limit that I was given. And complexity theory is important. It's something that must be in all the things we do. And so I would like to skip very fast about myself. You can Google me and find me. So thank you for your interest. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Professor.
Thank you so much, Professor Caldarelli, for covering the mathematical side of this very complex scientific topic. And now we're going to move to sensors, to how we capture all the data that are those bricks that enable us to build digital twins and produce useful applications. And we're going to do that with Professor Luigi Occhipinti, who's Director of Research in Smart Electronics, Biosystems, and AI. And Dr. Occhipinti is the Director of the Department of Engineering, the Center of Graphics, there's a Cambridge University in the UK. I'm sorry, that microphone is failing again. 25 years of experience in academia and industry, and he's developed emerging technology in areas like heterogeneous integration, printed electronics, polymers, and advanced molecular diagnosis systems. I'm going to give the floor to Professor Occhipinti.
Thanks very much. slide, which summarizes 3 of the major challenges that affect healthcare globally. And of course, starting from the wellness and fitness sector, is part of the healthcare when it comes to treating diseases or conditions, for instance, related to overweight. There are over 2.5 billion adults overweight worldwide. Also, independent aging, that's becoming really a strong need. We're trying to develop technologies to help prevent or delay the phase where people is losing independence due to age. And definitely the number of people is increasing and doubling over the next few years from 0.8 billion individuals aged over 65 to 1.6 billion expected in 2050. And the third, of course, is non-communicable diseases. I mean, this is the major cause of death worldwide, with over 41 million people dying for non-communicable diseases, which includes, cardiovascular, cancer, chronic diseases in general, and so on. So another aspect that we are observing, and it's pretty clear, is the proliferation of systems that become more and more smarter and autonomous. So most of the systems that are developed at the edge, as we say, are systems that provide smart functions typically in a portable device. And the first phase was where those systems are connected to the cloud or to the internet, while we are assisting also to a proliferation of systems that become independent both from the energy and the data points and the data communication standpoint. And this is the case, of course, of most of the wearable devices, as shown in this slide. Then we are going into the human body digital twin. So, as introduced by Guido and by Professor Herrera, first, I mean, digital twins are digital replica of physical systems, and can be also complex systems. But while in some sectors they've been already applied quite extensively, the field is still in its infancy when it comes to developing digital twins for the human body, whether this includes, single organs or functions of the body, and one day perhaps the whole body. What is important to help progress this field is developing technology that can extract information from the body. And that's where my research is mostly focused on. So developing the sensors that can extract data and then interpreting the data and processing the data so that we can eventually build this digital representation or digital replica of the body organs. And we have observed and we have studied the technologies that are around and that have been developed in the past decade or so, and based on a strong, on a robust, I would say, approach in terms of road mapping, trying to figure out how the digital twin model will evolve in the next few years. So this is actually a perspective paper. It's not something that we didn't develop all the building blocks in terms of digital twin, but we have, again, like I said, analyzing the needs and also the technology evolution, we can see at least 5 levels of human body digital twins in the future. So the first level is what we call the cross-sectional model, which is actually, just a picture of a function of a part of a body at a certain time. And this, of course, means that we can get, data out of sensors that operate in real time. While the second level is more what is called the deductive model, meaning that, okay, if I can observe the function of the organ or the body at time 0, and then I compare with the same data taken, in a certain observation during an observation period. So we develop, of course, longitudinal studies. Then we can also use this information to predict how the system will evolve. And so that's what we see in terms of use of human body digital twin, for instance, in monitoring and predicting disease progression and so on. The third level is what is the editable model. So now, okay, we have a model. Let's assume that we have a model of our body or a part of our body. And how can we use this? So how can we apply that, right? So the first thing is, okay, now I have something that has certain parameters. And if I manage to modify those parameters to predict what will be the outcome of an intervention, whatever the intervention is, like the drug intervention or a transplantation of an organ or a stimulation of for instance, a neural stimulation, then I can also, edit the model so I can do something more advanced in terms of predicting of the outcome of a medical treatment. The fourth level, as Professor Herrera mentioned at the beginning, I mean, there are, of course, the human body is complex, that's for sure, but it's also highly influenced by the environmental factors, so the exposure to the environment. That could be living habits, weather, terrain factors, and so on. So that's what the evolutionary model will try to capture. And finally, no model can be trusted and can be used if they are not explainable. So explainability and explainable AI is really fundamental towards the development of models that can be validated and approved for use also in a clinical setting. So that's what we discuss in this paper. And of course, by now it should be clear that we are working with a dual phase perspective. So from one we have the physical world where we where we can use sensors dislocated around the body, for instance, wearable sensors, inertial motion unit, electromyography, strain sensors, to monitor and provide assistance to patients in certain use case applications. And I will go into the details and provide you some examples of those three cases to make things a bit more, to put things into context. And from the other side, we have the digital world, where the algorithms also need to evolve from deep learning to transfer learning to explainable AI in order to become, so that the data extracted from those sensors can be used to actually deliver, monitoring results that are useful. Okay, so now, very quickly, I'm going to give you a few examples of work that we have done in the recent periods. So we start from the motion assistance. So one way to assist motion is basically just observe how the body moves. For instance, in a typical exercising phase, we can dislocate sensors around the body and collect information so that we can use this information through AI and machine learning models to inform the user whether, for instance, a movement is correct or need to be corrected, and how this could be corrected. That's the case, for instance, of Tai Chi or yoga or other gymnastics, where not only the muscle activation, but also and the motion, but also the posture plays a role. So we have done this and demonstrated that we can get a good accuracy from the combination of multiple sensors and information extracted from multiple sensors. Moving on into the assistance part, we are working with a company, with several companies actually, but this is one of the examples I want to bring, where we like to assist people while they age who gradually lose the strength in their muscles, so that they can be assisted through, for instance, modular exoskeletons. They should be modular because sometimes, you have the need is limited to just a joint or a couple of joints or a part of the body and so on. So what is the challenge? The challenge is that, first of all, technology should be, we don't want really to have something heavy and possibly try to develop something which is seamless. So we moved from the initial concept to something much more lighter, but also we need things that are safe, and the latency is one of the key challenges. So by the time we collect the data from the sensors, we process the data, and we use to feedback and control the actuators. So there is a lag time, and this latency is something that is producing what is the robotic movement of a person assisted by this kind of exoskeletons. So we've been working on that, and first, we collected data using several types of sensors. We use the data, for instance, in this case, we use EMG, IMUs dislocated in different parts of the body, but then we also use the capnography, so respirometry, to monitor the metabolic consumption, because at the end of the day, we want to deliver something that reduces the metabolic consumption of a person, so that we are sure that there is an actual assistance towards a lower metabolic consumption. And that allows us to develop some sensors that are also embedded into textiles. We use the information to make very simple digital twin models of this part of the body, and then we use this information to actually control modular exoskeletons in this case. This is a project which is ongoing, and it's also a collaboration with Aalborg University in Denmark. Moving on the latency, of course, one way to reduce the latency is to make electronics and system and mechanics much more efficient and stronger and more powerful. But this, of course, has also the downside. For instance, the energy consumption and the size of the battery. We don't want to have things that are heavy, as mentioned. So the other way is to work on the data. And work on the data means that we collect the data from multiple type of sensors, and then we use this information to predict the intention to move, or at least to predict the motion when it starts to be generated in the brain and then transmitted to the muscle down to the actuators. So that's the human motion intention analysis. We did a review of the technologies around that, and we provide also our perspective in this case. Going back to the communication assistance, that's another case study where we used several types of sensors and developed bespoke sensors for people who have difficulty to speak. For instance, patients after stroke, they tend to develop dysarthria, or they have some, there could be also neurological diseases associated with that. So in a way, the difficulty to speak it can be compensated by sensors that can capture the movement of the microvibration into the throat area to convert these signals into the equivalent of words and statements and so on. So we did this work, and because I'm also working with 3D materials with graphene and so on, we used a graphene coated textile network to make a sensor which can be embedded into what we call a smart choker. It's actually a piece of textile which is worn around the neck. It's not very, I mean, it can be also loosely worn, and the nice thing is that we can capture, with ultra high sensitivity, we can capture this micro movement around the throat area and convert these signals into something which is related to speech. And that was working pretty well. Here you see an example of the device. That's basically the background noise. Then the user starts to wear the choker, and this is when they start to speak. And here you have an example of signals that correspond to two words that are very similar in English, like ship and sheep. And you can see from the signals already that thanks to the ultra-high sensitivity of the sensors, we can actually have signals that are different from each other, while the sound, they do not necessarily have the same feature. So, okay, to cut the long story short, we used these sensors, we extracted the data, and we developed an AI system that can classify the words. And we used the standard top 10 frequently used nouns and top 10 frequently used verbs as a way to measure, the accuracy. Not only, we also compared with different types of sensors like strain and EMG sensors, and And the comparison in this case was not only in terms of accuracy, which already gives a highest accuracy as compared to the state of the art, but also in terms of computational complexity. So why we are looking at computational complexity is because we want to have something that at the end, in terms of the AI building block, could be integrated into a portable system, so into a portable electronics. We don't want to rely, like I said at the beginning, onto cloud. We don't want to send the information onto the cloud to get to get the data analyzed and so on. So, and in order to do that, we have to operate, and we still want to operate in real time. I mean, I don't want to start speaking and then the voice coming after 2 or 3 seconds, right? So in order to do that, we aim at developing AI models that are the lowest possible, that have the lowest possible complexity. And this is measured in terms of flops, or floating operation per second. And typically, just to give an idea, one of the, I mean, most of our smartphones are capable of processing up to 10 flops per milliseconds. So which means that if we deliver something which is 0.1 flops, it can be processed really in real time, so in much less than a millisecond. Okay, so then explainability, of course. Okay, how can we be sure that, okay, I processed these 20 words, then we extended to 100 words and so on. How can we be sure that the model is good enough? It can capture the actual words, right? So we need to be able to explain that the model is working. So here we used a modified version of the CAM technology, which is one of the techniques used for explainable AI. And in effect, I mean, in fact, we can see that from the signals by highlighting the area where the attention is maximized, basically we can see that, okay, the system is actually recognizing the feature that correspond to the words. So we are relatively reassured that the system is robust enough. And then there is, okay, we trained with a few users. We trained with a few vocabulary, few words. What happens if I have to move the system onto another user or onto new words that the system hasn't seen so far? So we use transfer learning in this case. So we train the system on the original user, and then when a new user comes that wants to wear the device, we freeze most of the network, and then we can fine tune with just a few samples collected from the new user so that we can achieve the highest accuracy again. And we also demonstrated that without the pre-train and with the pre-train, we can gain much higher accuracy through the transfer learning process. And this works also with the new words and new vocabularies. Then we extended our interest to this specific area or region of our body. Okay, that's why this is interesting. This is not only the speech is influenced by the extrinsic laryngeal muscle movement, but also we have the carotid artery, which provides information about the pulse waves, and of course the breathing patterns, because this is where the region where the airflow goes in and out. So another work that we published earlier this week in PNAS is this smart garment where we combined this strain sensors array onto a smart textile. This is a bit more complex than the previous case, in fact, but we still use a machine learning technique, an ensemble model that can provide the information about the breathing patterns. Why breathing patterns? Because there are, okay, this is how the device is made. We use some, again, graphene, but also other materials to maximize efficiency and also maximize robustness of the system. And basically, through this system, we could classify and recognize signals that are corresponding to the normal, healthy nasal breathing during sleep, and differentiate from the mouth breathing, which is a kind of sub-healthy conditions. Of course, we can recognize snoring, but that's not so clever for this device. My wife can do much better. I'm smiling, sorry. And then, of course, teeth grinding or clenching, which is called bruxisms, and most importantly, sleep apnea, which is a risky condition, actually, very difficult to detect with non-invasive techniques. So typically what happens in the case of sleep apnea is that the patient stays overnight in the hospital, that they are assisted through a whole bunch of measurement techniques, and that's not necessarily pleasant and not always possible, for instance, in the case of infants. So with this technology, we aim to provide the user with the possibility to monitor their sleep patterns while where they sleep, and we demonstrated reliability that is good enough. Okay, I think I need to speed up. Again, this is showing highest accuracy as compared to different type of models, lowest possible complexity, and also explainability, as discussed in the previous case. And we applied transfer learning, pretty much similar to what I discussed earlier, so I'm not going to spend time on this slide. Sometimes students, and I think I will take a couple of more minutes if you allow me. Sometimes students come to me and say, okay, how can I compete with what we have already? How can we do things better? How can I develop a sensor which is even more accurate, even more precise, or can do something better and more accurate? And my first advice is looking at our body, because I mean we have developed techniques to sense the world that are still much better than any other digital sensor. So in this case, we looked at the fingerprints. I mean, our finger tip and our lips are the most sensitive part of the body when it comes to touch. You can, I mean, with your finger, you can touch, you can feel the roughness of a surface, you can feel the movement, so the strain, and also the shear forces and so on. So we took inspiration from the fingerprint, and we looked at how they are made specifically, and we replicated this a model of the fingerprint, again using some active sensing material based on graphene, but also some polymers with different mechanical strength, so that we can actually develop what is called an isotropic omnidirectional strain sensor. So you can feel strain from any direction with a uniform performance. We can also achieve a limit of detection, which is record low, 0.01% of strain, high gauge factor, and of course durability and detection accuracy. Okay, this is how we use AI in this case. Because we could connect the part of the sensor through different channels, one way of detecting the direction of strain is monitoring the signal that are conveyed from the 3 channels. And by doing that, we can use a very simple deep learning model to actually classify the direction of strain. So that's the first case where we could apply both omnidirectional strain sensing and directional strain. And okay, we tested on very simple use case. How do you feel your pulse? That's very easy. So we did that with our sensor. How you feel your speech? Again, it's very easy to do with this kind of sensor. We work on wearable sensors for biochemical biomarkers. I'll skip that. We work on graphene. This is a work we've done over 10 years ago. We then monitored the field, and we published basically a review of the graphene for biosensor applications. I'll skip this one. Skip this one. Skip one. Sorry about that. And then we use self-supervised learning for eye disease classification. So these are typically diabetic retinopathy, glaucoma, progressive myopia, and so on. And I don't have time to go into the details. I'd like to just show you this slide where, for instance, in the case of diabetic retinopathy, the system is actually self-labeling images. So that's one of the key challenges, because we're talking about large databases in this case. So the availability of experts that can put a label to every single image to classify what the symptom corresponds to that correspond to the disease is very time consuming and requires a lot of expertise. So we use self-supervised learning techniques to provide the label-free approaches for tagging symptoms of potential diseases into the images. And we compare this with doctor-labeled to prove the viability of the approach. That's another way of seeing digital twin, if you wish, of a part of our body. Not only that, but in the case of this example, for instance, you can see that labels are placed by the system that are not corresponding to the labels placed by the doctor. And when the doctor retrospectively analyzed the image, they actually were stimulated to look better and to see that there are indeed early symptoms of glaucoma that weren't spotted in the standard labeling. So that's quite important as well. So in conclusion, we combined multimodal sensing and AI. For instance, I've discussed about physical sensors, biosensors quickly, and image processing. There are other information that come from clinical records, and the idea is to use multimodal fusion to actually deliver real-time monitoring, progress prediction, and intervention guidance for the development of human body digital twins. And therefore, to summarize, we are in the engineering department. We engineer things, we develop technology, we develop sensors. We also work with materials, typically 2D materials or functional polymers and so on. We use AI-powered wearable electronics to boost personalized healthcare and assistive technologies. And we see that wearables do not necessarily have to take the form of a rigid device like a smartwatch. They could also be part of our garments, our textile, and so on. And eventually, human body digital twin will evolve based on the new capabilities that are offered by these technologies. And with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and of course, thank to my team members and funders.
Muchísimas gracias al doctor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Occhipinti, for that explanation about the future sensors and the ability to capture and gather data, human data. We're going to go to the last presentation after the debate. It's a pleasure for me to introduce you Professor Trayanova, who is a professor, Mary B. Sachs of Biomedical Engineering, and also a professor of Applied Mathematics and Statistics. She's the director of the AI Alliance for Cardiovascular Diagnostic and Treatment Innovation, that is to say, ADVANCE. And she's also the director of AI Research, Health and Medicine, Data Science, and AI Institute at the Johns Hopkins University of Baltimore, the United States. Dr. Trayanova, as you can see, she's well known internationally because she was a leader in the computational design of electrophysiology of the heart and arrhythmias specifically. She's developed digital twins personalized in the heart based on clinical images representing faithfully the way the diseased organ works. With the digital twins and approaches of deep learning, she has created new technologies to predict the risk of heart failure and to improve the precision of catheter therapies. It is a pleasure for me to introduce you Dr. Trayanova. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I know it's the end of the day, and I really all being here and listening to me. I'm very excited to be here. This is really special. The foundation seems to be doing a wonderful job in promoting science, and I'm glad to be here also with the representatives from Springer and Nature, a journal in which we have published frequently. And so I wanna state that it is very important as a scientist to be able to communicate to people what is the value of science, what is the value of what we do. And I think forums like this, where everybody can be present, ask questions, gives us an opportunity to convey the importance of our research and how excited we are about that, but also what it is, what's the contribution to the general, the society in general. So in my lab and my institute, we work on digital twins, and we also work on AI. And there is a meeting ground. Today, in my presentation, I will talk only about digital twins. So I wanted to start with what is the digital twin. It has been discussed today, but I wanted to tell you that it has been a mess in terms of what is a digital twin. Everybody assumed what a digital twin is, whatever they wanted for a while. And last year in the spring, the National Academies of Sciences, National Academy of Medicine, and the National Academy of Engineering in the US got together and wrote this document that defined what digital twin is. And digital twin is many things, but it's not AI, it's not many other things, and the way they put it in their summary is basically a virtual representation of a system that mimics the structure, context, and behavior of that system. The data for the system, to construct the system, comes from the physical system. What is important and what defines digital twins is, which is different from just doing computer simulations, is that it has predictive capability and informs decisions that realize value in society. So we work in digital twins in medicine, and we wrote this review last year about the new revolution of digital twins in medicine. Certainly that has taken off, and right now there are a lot of parts of medicine that are really implementing digital twins. Cancer is one of them. I work in cardiology, and so I will talk about the heart. Now, digital twins is typically, as I said, a system of a digital representation of a system. So in a way, it takes only the data for that system. AI is different. AI uses large data across systems or similar representations to mine patterns in the data. But there is an overlap, and in our hands, we actually use AI to construct and solve some of the digital twins. So I will talk a little bit about that. So that is sort of a schematic of what in our hands we have done with digital twins of the heart. That's what we do. So what we do is we construct the digital twin from patient data, basically medical images, health records, clinical recordings, and we have used reconstruct digital twins of actual patients, like the actual representation of the heart. Like you can see it on the computer, you can play with it. And we use these digital twins, we've used them for two main avenues of research. One is for prognostication and clinical decision support, and the other for interventions. A patient comes to the hospital and we want to determine what is the best treatment for that specific patient. And so we've then done a bunch of studies, and then patients have been followed up, and we can define the outcomes of using the digital twins. And again, we use AI in the generation of these digital twins. So I wanted to tell you, what are we looking at? So I'm looking at arrhythmias. Arrhythmia is heart rhythm disorder. The heart rhythm is the electrical activity in the heart, right? What you record with the ECG. So we are looking into heart rhythm disorders, arrhythmias, and they are very little. Like this is sudden cardiac death is the biggest killer in the world. So dysfunction in the electrical system is lethal. The electrical activity of the heart precedes the contraction of the heart. So if the electrical system fails, contraction fails. They're very tightly coupled. So that's why it's so important to understand well where the arrhythmias originate and what's specific to the given patient. So here is, for instance, what happens in a patient heart that has a heart attack. So when a patient has heart attack, typically what you have is somewhere a blood vessel is going to get occluded and the heart will get damaged. It develops a scar. So the tissue will die and instead a connective tissue scar will grow there. That happens because the cells no longer, in this area, no longer get oxygen, the toxins are not washed out, and they simply die, and they are replaced by connective tissue. So when infarct occurs, when we have infarct scar, you can see right here, it can be distributed. And now you can think, when you have an electrical wave, which is the normal activity in the heart, when it propagates in the heart, it encounters these damaged areas. And what happens is the electrical signal, instead of propagating through the heart, and then the heart contracts, gets caught on this, on the scar right here. Basically gets caught, and what happens, it starts to go around, gets blocked into places. Also, the cells that are surrounding the scar, they're not normal, they're semi-viable. It's all this damaged area. So the electrical signal, instead of going through the heart and triggering contraction, gets kind of set right here and recirculates. So when that happens is when we have arrhythmia. That's what arrhythmia is. Arrhythmia is the recirculating electrical wave in the heart. It looks like a little hurricane on the heart. The electrical activity goes around and around. And when that happens, basically, you know, the ECG does not look normal, and basically the pump, there is no pump anymore, and the heart cannot pump because it follows the electrical activity. So if the electrical activity is staying in one place, it's doing like this. It's like a bag of worms. It's trying to contract and doesn't pump blood. So that's when death ensues. So it's 5 minutes between onset of this arrhythmia and death. And so it's very important to really understand what to do in these patients. So how to predict which patient will have an arrhythmia? This is a very big problem in clinical practice because currently, the way you predict who will have a heart attack or arrhythmia like that is doctors use what's called ejection fraction. That is an amount of blood that's pumped out from the heart with every single beat. Now, pumping of the blood is plumbing problem, not an electrical problem. So basically, a decision is made based on a pumping situation, not an electrical situation. In other words, you have an electrical issue in your house and you don't call the electrician, you call the plumber to fix it. That's how decisions are made. So there is this big lack of knowledge how we can predict which patients will develop an arrhythmia. And so our first approach to that is to use digital twins from imaging and other data to create a digital twin, and then what we can do is we can poke and prod it in the digital twin and to figure out whether arrhythmia will occur and predict the risk. So our first paper in that area, when we started working on bringing in clinical practice digital twin, was in 2016 in Nature Communications, when we worked with patients post-infarct. They had infarcts, but it was unclear whether they need defibrillators to protect them, so we had to decide how to, what would be the clinical decision making. So we had 41 patients enroll in this clinical study, and what I'm showing here is 22 of them. So you can see by clinical parameters, they were all at high risk and had to receive defibrillators. It's very hard to live with a defibrillator. It can discharge at any time, and it's very, very painful. So we predicted that the decision that's been made in the clinic actually was not correct. For many patients, they did not need. So these hearts, 22 I'm showing here, you can see reconstructed hearts of patients. These are digital twins. You can see with the yellow right here is the distribution of the scar in those patients. And so in what we are showing here, in some of them, we developed this recirculating wave in the digital twin, demonstrating that they really will develop an arrhythmia. In others, there was none. So they got defibrillator implanted when they didn't need it. So this just makes their life so difficult, but they didn't need that. And so also in terms of predictive capability, okay, the performance of our digital twins was so much better than any ejection fraction is what I told you, this plumbing parameter, we were much better. So this was our first use of digital twins. So then we decided that we need to move to more complex diseases. Now, infarct is, fairly easy in terms of understanding, quote unquote. It's still a very difficult problem, but there are other diseases in the heart which have other remodeling properties. So then in these more complex diseases, we use the digital twin, we do the simulations and predictions with digital twin, and then we use the results of the digital twins and combine them with other clinical data that is not incorporated in the digital twin to predict risk. And this is a paper in 21 in which we predicted risk of sudden cardiac death in these patients who had a disease called cardiac sarcoidosis. This is a disease in which you have this it's an inflammatory disease. So what it has is, it has a massive amount of inflammation. Here is shown on PET scans. And also they develop fibrosis, like growth of connective tissue in the heart, and it shows on a contrast-enhanced MRI. So we use these clinical, we had these contrast-enhanced MRIs. They are called LG scans. They are late gadolinium enhancement, and the PET scans to construct geometrical digital twins to represent where the scar is, where the inflammation is, and then we were able to predict which of these patients will have an arrhythmia. And of our 45 patients, 16 actually had arrhythmias. Now, we don't know that. All of the stuff that we do is blind to the clinical data. All what we have provided is the actual scans of the patient. So when we construct the digital twin and we have the distribution of fibrosis and inflammation, we also represent the behavior of every cell in the digital twin. So we have cells that have ionic transport across the membranes. So that's a very complex model and digital twin of the patient. And then we incorporate these clinical characteristics, but we are blind to what was their actual outcome. So here shows how we constructed it from the MRIs, from the PET scan. We combine them. It's a fusion digital twin, and it looks like that. This is the heart, the bottom chambers in the heart, left and right, and you can see very heterogeneous areas of fibrosis and inflammation. And then what we did is, before we predict and use this predictor on a more general basis, we wanted to figure whether that is indeed correct. And so we did some sort of first clinical validation, and then we proceeded to construct what we called CHI, Computational Heart and Artificial Intelligence Risk Predictor, right here. So the digital twin is basically mechanistic model. By definition, it's explainable. Everything, you know everything about it. You know the cell behavior. And then so we use the scans to construct it. The results of the digital twin we fed into a machine learning algorithm with some other clinical data, and then we predicted whether these patients will have a risk of arrhythmia. Now, I want to compare the results. When you say something really works, then you want to compare that with what's happening in the clinic. So for these patients, you can see here, although there are only 45 patients, you can see our results here in and our predictive capability in cross-validation and testing. And now let's compare what was done in the clinic with these patients. So you can compare the predictive capability, how area under the receiver operator curve, the closer to 1 this is, the better it is. You can see here the clinical predictive. This is the ejection fraction that I told you, the plumbing. It's incredible how low the sensitivity, positive predictive value, very low. All the clinical parameters did a much low performance. So we were able to demonstrate that the digital twin of the patient can be used in this case. So the advantages of this is that you can combine multiple imaging modalities with knowledge of cellular behavior, and also works well in small cohorts because it's a mechanistic model. You don't have to, if you are using it later in AI, it doesn't have to learn the physics or physiology. It's within the model already. So so this was sort of when you do a predictive capability for whether there will be a negative outcome. I want to show you is when you have a patient comes to the clinic, they have an arrhythmia and you need to treat them. What do you do? The procedure is called ablation. Ablation is where you want to ablate the arrhythmia, which means you thread actually a catheter in the heart, goes in the heart, and energy, radio frequency, cryo, there are other types. You give energy through the catheter and burn piece of the heart. You burn the perpetrator. You burn the areas where the arrhythmia originates, okay? That's called ablation. And it is done for many arrhythmias, and it's a very popular for arrhythmias in the upper chambers, and atrial fibrillation is one of the most common human conditions. It's one of the huge healthcare expenses because 2% of the population has it, and every fourth person above 65 will have it if he doesn't have it anymore. So it's a very common situation, and we wanted to use the digital twins to determine how best you would treat a given patient using digital twins. So that was my schematic here for if you have damage to the heart. What you want to do is we want to predict how to treat this best. How do we treat this best? So what you need is you need to burn somewhere here to stop that electrical wave, like deliver energy, burn the tissue, and then you don't know where. So this is a huge conundrum. The doctor will thread the catheter in the heart, and they will map around and try to figure out what to do. What we want to do is we want to have that a priori before the procedure. We develop the digital twin of the patient and then give it to the doctor during the procedure so they can execute the personalized, very concrete plan. So that's, so as I said, we worked on first, a very important part is working on the atria because it's a very common human arrhythmia. It also leads to stroke. So it really has to be stopped in the best possible way. But when you look, these are scans, MRI scans of patient atria that are sort of segmented, and you can see the green is the fibrosis that grows. As we grow older, the fibrosis grows in the heart and it causes a lot of arrhythmia in the upper chambers. So looking at this, where would one burn? Look how much it is, look how distributed it is. Where to burn, which is the most precise place to deliver radiofrequency ablation. So our concept was to construct a digital twin of the given patient, determine before the procedure what we are doing here, and then what we do is, once we reconstruct it, we kind of stress it out electrically. We give it a little signals everywhere and see when you give it a little signal, electrical wave will propagate when it catches somewhere. And these locations where it catches, not every place is going to catch a wave. And so we find these specific locations. It depends on the cells, depends on how the fibers in the heart are, depends on the fibrosis density and distribution. So that's what we do. We try to determine, basically, we try to determine where an arrhythmia occurs. Right here is one that is kind of going. And then we show, okay, you have to burn this location and draw this line to prevent that. And then what we do is we import this during the procedure on the screen of the physician or group of physicians who are executing the procedure so they can see where the perpetrator is and they navigate the catheter directly to that location. So that's how, there is no other prediction. The only way to determine is by using these digital twins. And so this is how it looks like. This is the procedure room. The patient is right here. Basically, They have on the screen our prediction. And I want you to understand how amazing that thing is, because my students are students of engineering. And you have these engineering students there during the procedure that are directing the doctors where to do. So it is something very empowering, how the future would look like, how engineering can be embedded together with medicine. And so that's how we deliver these solutions. Our first paper was on this. We did 10 patients back in 2019. And then after that, let me show you actually how it looks like. This is an atria of one of our patients. The green is the fibrosis. And that's how the arrhythmia looks in this patient in one location, and it has another location. And so we know what these two locations, and they were part of the ablation targets. So once this was very successful after this Nature Biomedical Engineering paper, we approached the FDA. The FDA is the body that regulates all medical devices in the US. And we were approved for a randomized clinical trial. So currently I have a randomized clinical trial on using digital twins to treat patients with atrial fibrillation. And it has two arms. One is on standard of care, whatever they do in the clinic, and the other is using we call our approach Optima. So it is really radically new and preemptive method to predict these targets. And we've enrolled 61 patients and done all the prediction, and they have been ablated. And we are now following these patients to see what happens with them. And so following that, actually in the spring, we got written even in the Wall Street Journal about the use of the first use of digital twins in patient care. Which was really important to have sort of it's a, you know, one of the biggest newspapers in the US, and just to have this understanding of what digital twins can do for clinical practice. We are also trying to optimize the strategy all the time. And this summer, we had a paper in Nature Cardiovascular Research that tries to, when you're predicting where to ablate, how you want to make it as small as possible, because otherwise you damage a lot of tissue. If you look at some, that was from our paper, but I wanted to show you, the dots are the burns by a catheter. This is done in the clinic without our digital twin. You can see most of that atrium is burned. So our goal here is to determine with the digital twin what is the optimal minimum size of the lesion, so the function of the atrium is preserved. We are also using this approach for the ventricular arrhythmias. The ventricles are the main pumps, and the arrhythmias in those are little. And we developed a very similar approach from reconstructing and then predicting where to ablate. And I want to show you only one example here. When we are doing this prediction, so this is the benefit of the digital twin, is when you predict something, you predict it, and then you so I predict where to ablate, and then I take this prediction and put it back in the digital twin to see what is the reaction of the digital twin to this treatment. And then sometimes new arrhythmia will occur, and then we are trying to capture everything. Normally in the clinical practice, they have no means of doing that. So a patient will come, will be treated, they go home and develop a new arrhythmia in 4 or 6 months or whatever. So our technology incorporates not only the arrhythmias that are present now, but the ones that will occur after the treatment. And so this was very an important example. It was a study in which we predicted that this patient has to be ablated in these 3 locations. We do not know anything. What was done to the patient, we know nothing. We received only the imaging. So the patient apparently went to the clinic, was ablated, and this is where they ablated the patient, right here. So it's exactly the same one of our locations, much bigger size. Patient went home. What happens after 7 months? The patient comes back and is re-ablated where? Exactly at our prediction. So the lesson here is, if the ablation would have been done following the digital twin, the second procedure would have been avoided. So this is a huge savings in money and patient issue, patient well-being. So at once, everything is predicted, not just the current arrhythmias, but what can happen after that. And so we are doing this in more complicated diseases. I just wanted to tell you here is we have started to incorporate other information. This is how we do it when we incorporate genetic information for the patient at the cellular level, and we are able to predict also where to ablate. And I think this might be my last slide. I wanted to show you, no, the one before the last. We very much, this was again blind to what was done in the clinic. Ours are the yellow prediction, and what was done in the clinic is here. It's a very good correspondence, but what is important, we predicted which patient will come back for another redo ablation, and we predicted, see for instance here, they came after 11 months, and the purple is where they ablated them on the second time. It's exactly where we predicted. And so in the other cases, that guy came right after. For instance, you can see here, this was our target. It was not ablated. When the patient came back, it was ablated exactly there. So it has a very strong predictive capability. And the volume is much small. So to conclude, I believe that hard digital twins are demonstrating significant predictive capabilities in clinical outcome prognostication and treatment planning, and digital twins and its sister technology, AI, are poised to be a major tools in precision medicine and in cardiology. Thank you very much for the attention. I want to acknowledge a huge team of collaborators, clinical. We are very focused on clinical application and working with clinicians and bringing the technology to the patient bedside and point of care. Thank you very much.
Should we all go to the stage now? Guido?
This is so hot.
Quiero agradecer primero a los speakers.
I want to thank all the speakers for their excellent presentations. And now we're going to open the floor to questions. We'll be switching to English, but you can ask your questions in Spanish or English as you prefer, because the speakers have headphones for simultaneous translation for questions in Spanish. And so I would encourage you to think of questions and to participate in this discussion as actively as you can.
For everyone seated here. So one of the key things we learned today is that digital twins are highly complex and depend on a lot of different cutting-edge technologies in parallel. They require AI for the decision-making and the predictive power. They require sensing, appropriate sensing to gather the right data. They require the appropriate models to model that complexity at the right level. So I wanted to ask all the speakers to tell me what, in their view, is the biggest limiting factor in their applications of digital twins for today. So is it that, we don't have the right amount of data because the sensing hasn't reached the capabilities that we need? Is it that the complexity is not at the right level? We're still looking at a very simple system when we need to expand to a higher complexity system? Is it the predictive power that is not really where it needs to be? I want to hear sort of where you think the biggest bottlenecks in your view are right now. Maybe we'll start with you, Natalia.
Absolutely. What is the complexity of the digital twin very much depends on what problem you're solving first to start. And so we are trying to solve a problem of arrhythmias, where they're generated, how they are treated. So we need certain level of complexity. And so there are two. I can tell you that because I deal with patients all the time. We have a patient in the clinical trial, they come, and I have to produce a prediction. And so what I do is I ask the clinicians to scan the patient about 10 days before the procedure to give me time to execute all the simulations, right? Because this is a lot of testing. We do, predict this and that, and then again, when we predict to ablate, we put the ablations in and so forth, so it takes time. So for me, the biggest problem has been, the number one problem has been the fact that I have to use high-performance computing infrastructure. Those are very complex equations. They are, I have over 20,000 elements, and I have like a massive system of equations because each cell has about 50 equations, and they had 20,000 cells and so forth. So it's a massive system. So, and I'm solving that on high performance. Often, you know, there is skew. Somebody else is doing simulation. We cannot get the CPUs that we need. So that's a huge problem for us. And so, you know, I had to make a special request, you know, that my stuff runs when we have a patient. So that's a big limitation. So we took a really massive steps in trying to figure out what can be do, because we cannot scale it up. I need to bring it to hospitals, not to just Johns Hopkins where I have the facility, but in any hospital. So what I want to do is to have it being solved on a personal computer in the hospital. So we put a massive amount of effort into developing a neural operator, an artificial intelligence that solves the equations. So we don't have to solve them. So, and we just had a paper in Nature Computational Sciences in December that became, it's the biggest hit of my career, actually. Basically, it's a neural operator, artificial intelligence that takes all this system of equations and solves it in one second. And so now this can be done in any hospital on any computer. We are still tuning the prediction. So this is the biggest, that's going to be our biggest step. So we are very aware of the limitations and what is the next step that we have to do.
Fascinating. I wonder if Professor Herrera wants to go now. And do you agree that it's mostly the computing power and the use of AI models to make that decision quicker? There's the limitation, or what do you see as the biggest limitation right now?
Really, now, if we put together all the presentation and according to the Natalia studied, we can observe first the complexity to have a digital twin of any part of the body, particularly the heart. The complexity from the mathematical point of view and the physical point of view, the necessity to put together the sensor or wearables and all of them, and really in the near future, in some cases, of course, we will have clear information from the prediction, as Natalia presented in the study. Only with a few patients it's possible to have some study and to have clear conclusion. But for me, in the near future, for different problems, the challenge will be the explainability, as Luigi was also discussing, all us, because in a lot of problems, we use deep learning, we use opaque and black box, black artificial intelligence system, and now the current presentation shows the necessity to advance in the explainability of the models. The doctor, in the other side, must understand what happens inside of the digital twin, and when we put together all the internal variable, external variable, and the complexity of the system. Really, the body is the most complex artifact that we can simulate. And we observe the difficulty, and I think we have really a big challenge. But in the future, of course, in the next decade, we will advance in the personalized medicine with all this technology, but with the goal of making, to provide to the doctors the tools in order to understand what happened and to take the correct decision. I remember one of the slides, Luigi, your slides, that in the near future, I don't remember what, or Guido, in the near future, we will have part of the population will be older than 60, and the cost, your slide, and the cost that the health will be around the world. We need this kind of technology in order to reduce the cost and to provide the correct personalization in the medicine for the people.
It's a really good point. We hear a lot about the explainability problem of AI. To me, your slide showing the heart with the 3 spots that needed to be ablated, and the fact that clinicians only focused on one. If had the AI explained why the other 2 needed to be ablated as well, how the model had arrived to that conclusion.
You don't need an AI. That's a personalized model. That's just computation of all the components together. You don't need. I can explain that. I know why they didn't, because the other two spots occur after they burn that one, they occur a little later. They can't see that. I know that because I put that first spot in the model and I can see what happens after that. Digital twins are fully explainable. The concept of explainability doesn't even apply because they are, by definition, they're based on physiology and physics. And so everything, I can pull out every cell behavior. So I know all about it.
Right, but the predictive aspect of the AI, right, that is a component of the digital twins. In your mind, Guido, where are the limitations? I thought it was really interesting that you debated where the complexity of the model should sit. Should we focus on digital twins at the cellular level, at the organ level? Are the multi-organ level? How do we make that decision?
That's a very difficult question, but we just saw in the wonderful slides I just learned about arrhythmia. I was also a little bit worried during the presentation and ablation that, I mean, of course, it's mechanicistic, so you know what you're doing, but there are so many questions, there are so many things, and at the end, you would like to have an answer, right? No? And that's your problem. But you don't get an answer because you have so many things to take into account altogether. No? So this is somehow the limitation that, if you want, is the art of modeling. So when you describe a system, what is important and what is not? So at the moment, just scientist experience is the answer.
It's also the problem, though. That, you know, for me, I know the clinical problem, and that helps me determine what you have to construct to be able to respond to that specific, call for action, if you will.
Correct.
Yeah.
And at that point, under that view, I mean, we talk about AI because AI is a fashionable name, but actually that's as machine learning. So what you would like to, is a subset of AI. What you would like to know is to extract information, patterns mostly, so repetition of things, in a huge amount of data that you cannot possibly inspect yourself. So this is the frontier at the moment. No? So having very trained models that can tell you out of all this data, the sensors, the wonderful things Luigi presented before, all this data from sensors, you can't possibly explore all of them. You would like to have some algorithmic procedure in order to extract when this happens, and this happens, and this happens in the same moment, okay, trouble. So this is what is the limitation now.
Yeah. So, Dr. Occhipinti, you showed the power of sensing, right, and the importance of sensing in all of this, and it was clear, right? You need that data first. But obviously, you also showed us the huge advances that we have in sensing things that are in the skin, right? Because the skin is accessible. Right. But there's so many organs that are inaccessible. So what is the limitation, in your view, to gather the right data for biomedicine?
Well, first of all, I'd like I think that example from Natalia was brilliant because it demonstrates that when you have the accurate digital twin, like in the case of the heart, you have everything that is needed to help, predictability of diseases, treatment of diseases, and so on. This is exactly where we want to one day be for not just the heart, but possibly all other organs in the body. Unfortunately, for many diseases in many parts of the body, it's not so trivial, and that's why we are putting effort, to develop sensors that can inform development of digital twin models of other parts of the body. And I mentioned skin because, first of all, one way to collect information is of course, using invasive techniques. In many cases in cancer, we see very often examples where without proceeding with the surgery, you can't really recognize or you can't really capture the extent of the disease and so on. So there are cases where it's much more complex, and not even MRI or CT scan can inform this information. But there are other cases where we have the possibility to capture signals and symptoms from even non-invasive wearable devices that go beyond, what we are in terms of technology capabilities at the moment. That's what we are basically trying to aim and pursue. So pushing the limit towards more sensitive approach can provide information and data that can possibly be used in developing AI-based models. I say AI because, and I agree with Guido, it's more machine learning. Is learning how to use this information to predict an outcome or to predict the evolution of a system. And of course, one of the key limitations at the moment, both for AI and for digital twin, is that they need to be trustable. So you need to, that's why explainability, as we discussed, is so important. Because without explainability, I cannot gain the trust of a clinician, even if I show 100% accuracy from data, but they still say, okay, but you're not a clinician, so I don't trust the model, right? So that's basically my
I mean, clearly in the operating room, we'll have engineers, we'll have clinicians, we'll have computer scientists, everyone is needed. So I want to invite the audience, please, to raise your hand, or if you want to ask a question, there's microphones going around. I think we have a question right here, please.
For your time and for the explanations. I was wondering, so there's this concept, the Anthropic team is working on NLMs, which is mechanistic interpretability. And it's trying to understand why AI comes up with a certain answers. And they're trying hard to do it, and it's always hard for them to do. But you were saying, Natalia, that when you saw that hard with those 3 dots, you could understand exactly why the AI predicted that. And I wonder, in such a complex system as the body is, how is it that it's easier than with a large language model, for example?
No, in this case, it is a model of the patient's heart exactly, so I know everything. But, for instance, if I want to predict risk of sudden cardiac death in the general population, I was doing some patients that had like infarct in the beginning. Okay, I cannot use digital twins, right? We have to use AI, we have to use deep learning. What we do is, I have a whole big thing on AI as well. We do multimodal AI. You can take you can take imaging if there is, you can take ECGs, temporal signals. We take electronic health records, and you build that, and then you have like some sort of a decision that the approach renders, and then you try to figure out why did it make a decision. It's really very important indeed. And we use all kinds of, technologies that are available right now to provide explainability. So the easiest for us is to explain why certain behavior occurs based on the clinical data. We can point out, this patient had diabetes. The diabetes increased the risk of sudden cardiac death. We increased it by so much %. We can do that for every patient. And this is very important because you can also instruct lifestyle changes for this patient. This comes from our AI algorithms. What is more important is, what is more difficult is interpretability on the images. Sometimes the algorithm makes a prediction based on the MRI scans for a large population. And there is like an attention mechanism. It says right here. It can tell me, but I don't know why right here. So there is still a very big area, particularly in images, where I don't know exactly why it makes. But when it comes to like the ordinary clinical data that's collected, we are pretty good at explainability of that.
So just so to make sure that I understand, so it's mainly because there is a digital twin that you can make that interpretability.
That's just using the AI. To me, while there is interaction between AI and digital twins within the methodology of building the digital twins, we work with large data and with many patients in different diseases where we just do AI, multimodal AI. We don't create digital twins. The digital twins have to be scalable to be used in the hospital. And that's what I was saying was a limitation until you can see how small my cohorts are. And with this new technology that we developed, we now can potentially use that and fuse better digital twins. That's where I think we will use digital twins for explainability when we can run them in less than a minute or something, So hopefully we'll be coming to this middle ground of overlap.
Thank you. I have another question over there.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your excellent presentations. I would like to expose a couple of questions. Firstly, to clarify that artificial intelligence is not a new concept. At least in telecommunications, we are in the fourth generation. But closely related with the digital twin in particular. Sorry. And concerning to the digital twin, the presentation, Guido is mentioning the complex system. That's a right question, because I was using some kind of digital models in the past only for very complex systems. That means that a system, as you know, is not the sum of the parts. So if you are able to perform a very nice digital twin for very small elements, for instance, maybe a protein or maybe a cell, whatever it is, the problem is how to integrate the number of elements for a complex system in order to give a right view of the behavior of the system. The question is, are you considering any kind of reference architecture for these complex systems? That means that some kind of communication scenario is going to be necessary between the different elements, even between different proteins. Okay, so the question is like that. Is there any reference architecture specifying which is the way to follow for the management of very complex systems?
I imagine it's for me.
We hope so.
See, society is a complex system. And there is no, well, unfortunately, I may look lazy on that, but it's impossible to engineer complex systems since, well, it's impossible. I don't know how to do. Okay, let's put the weak version of that. Because complex systems, you're perfectly right, of course, is more than the sum of the parts. Okay, so what's going on there? You would like to study better what's going on, and then you discover, or let's say, let's play, we are sort of machine learning, so we don't know exactly what's going on, but we collect the data and try to find the patterns, okay, similarities. And often these complex systems lack cause and effect, clear cause and effect, so there is no red button to push and obtain something. Ecosystems, you would like to improve the health in an ecosystem, very simpler than a heart, I would say, okay? And then you put wolves in it that should, you imagine would kill anything, and then the ecosystem improves, actually. It's much better than before. So it's not clear what's the cause and what's the effect. Which is the architecture, you cannot put. The systems are often self-organized, so they decide themselves which is the best architecture, you know? So I don't want to be, I mean, to push so far the discussion, but imagine that there is not a creator in the nature, no? Things just evolve, and they have to find their way to, you know, to functioning in some way, okay? Or maybe there is, but man, he's a good physicist and let things evolve. Okay, so it's impossible at the moment, it will not in the future probably, to say which is the best architecture to put in a digital twin to see the interior parameters and the exterior parameters and to see which is the exchange of information. You should observe, maybe at different scales, maybe at the same scale, different replicas. These are the tricks of statistical physics, and try to learn which is the structure of this object with which they self-organize. At the moment, this is the best answer I can give you. I know it's not satisfactory, but really is the best I can do, yeah. Sorry about that. Yeah.
So I'd like to,
yeah.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
You are right that we are under a continuous evolution of the technology. The current advantage now is that we can manage a complex problem, complex system, because we can put together a time series, a lot of sensors, data, image, tabular data, external variables, environmental variables, and we can manage this system with thousands and thousands of variables. Now the complexity of the problems can be processed by the current machine learning, by the deep learning and new technology. We are under evolution. Of course, we are using similar technology because the foundation of neural networks in the Hinton Nobel Prize, received the Nobel Prize by the studies 40 years ago, but now we can manage all this kind of information. And now we can manage the image, the Natalia problems. Now we can process the image, we can process a lot of sensors at the current apnea problems we can manage because we can use all this kind of information. For me, the most important is that we only can, unfortunately, design a digital twin of one small part of the body for one illness, and the most important is the question. We need a question, we need an objective, a goal, and now with the current technology, we can provide answer to the question. But we need, of course, to advance more complex system, putting together more information, different illness, and so on. But I think that now in the last 10 years, we have enough and important advance with new models, high-performance computing capabilities, and so on. And now we can develop this kind of study that it would be impossible to think about them 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. So one very important aspect of all of this is sort of the data that we're gathering. We gather highly, personal, biological, medical data from patients. So it's obvious that we need to debate sort of the issues around that. On the one hand, the way I see it, there is a real conflict in a way between the value of protecting a patient's own data and assuming that a digital twin, it belongs to that person and is a private entity for them to keep and use and share in any way that they think is appropriate, with the reality of AI where any data set can train the model to make that same AI better, to make the next generation of digital twins better. So how do we reconcile, for biomedical applications, the need to protect the data a patient has and their digital twin with the value of sharing that digital twin so that we can make the next digital twin better?
Excellent question.
No answer?
Really. We are still in a nascent phase trying to figure out what's what. Like with digital twins, for instance, when I construct a digital twin, okay, it's a mathematical model ultimately. The patient information has been assimilated in such a way that it cannot be reconstructed. It cannot be. This is a completely non-identifiable, so it doesn't really belong to the patient because it is sort of a mathematical entity. Now, if you, as we had a little discussion today when I published in Nature, Nature says, okay, we have all your data, and can I make not the images of my patients, but the geometry of their hearts? Here is, for instance, that I don't know, because, maybe one can argue, depending on the institution, that there is some level, it is not completely anonymous, anonymity is, so it is a very tricky point, what is what, so you can be from the mathematical model, which can be completely not associated with the patients, to levels of identifiable information. We don't have much precedence in that. Some institutions, have a bigger, weight on that for publishing. It's just a very difficult question, and we're going to make a lot of decisions on the fly as we go forward with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else wants to comment before I go to those two questions? Anybody wants to comment on the...
Well, I'm afraid that the situation is even worse than the one you're mentioning, because if you talk about data and protection of data, imagine those people whose heart has been digital twinized, so if this word exists. You can add information on that. So you know, you have a mathematical map of the heart, but maybe you can go on the social and see their habit, what they post on Instagram, if they continuously post a picture of meat, sugar, this kind of stuff. It's a disaster. I mean, would you insure them at the end?
You're right. I mean, I am excluding all these situations. You know, we actually, for the clinical trial, we have patient consent that because I'm not an MD, I am not supposed to have any access to the information, but I'm in the treatment room. My students are in the treatment room. So they sign a consent that we can be there and we can have the information, but they don't have any rights. I'm telling you just what's in my clinical trial. They don't have any rights on the digital twin that is generated that we predicted. But you're right, it's a very great area.
Interesting, yeah.
Perhaps I can comment on this. I mean, if I think to myself and my own data, right? So it's always a matter of, balancing benefits versus risks, right? So from one side, I would imagine a future where with my medical records, I still have my digital twin of my body or my part of the organs, because this is part of the information that is useful for clinicians to help and facilitate intervention, right? What the challenge will, I think, could be is that, for instance, even if I have the digital twin of my heart, I would never put this information onto ChatGPT to see, is it healthy or not? I mean, that's basically it's a sharing the information or the risk. In other words, the risk of leaking personalized information onto the net. And that's why I think that at least in our work we try to develop as much as possible models and AI that works at the edge without the need to rely on centralized resources. There is also an impact in terms of sustainability because, I mean, every time I interrogate the cloud, I'm aware that there is an awful amount of energy spent just to answer simple, sometimes silly questions from generative AI. That's my take on that.
That's great. We have a question over there, and then another one there. We'll go with that one first.
You on your presentation. Thank you. My question was that the use of large volumes of personal data raises ethical and privacy issues. The protection of this data and informed consent are crucial to ensure trust in this technology, especially when integrated with artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies. But I think you have already answered this, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, a very important issue. I hope we touched the surface. I don't know if we answered, but
for the public outreach.
Another question here.
Thank you for the presentation. Following this question, during this week, last Monday, 3 of my friends in UK have received an offer from his health insurance company to reduce the tariff in a 90% if they compromise for the next 3 years, if they use a wearable, 3 hours per week in exercise, and 1 medical review per year. That means that in 3 years, the company will have all information for these customers, and they decide if he's a good customer for the future, or they could reject them.
I mean, it's a very good point. I don't have much to say, but it's because it's a business decision for both the insurance companies and the customer in this case to balance, the advantages versus the disadvantages. I mean, like I said earlier, I'm not always happy to provide my personal information, even if I have to pay a little bit more price in the insurance. Yeah,
data is the new gold, right? We all know that, so protect your data. I think we had a question over there in the back, or no? Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the presentations. And my question is about, because you have talked a lot about explicability, But other thing is, for example, the prediction, if it is good or not. I mean, for example, there is uncertainty. So what about that? I mean, like the likelihood of the prediction, if it is right or not.
Yeah. How many false positives do we have? How many false negatives?
Or to give some metrics to the doctors in order, like, to give some idea of this prediction is like to be trusted or not.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you have clinical trials, right? It may be that I'm creating digital twins for personalized prediction and they're worth nothing. It's possible, right? We have to start with that premise. So that's why we have for healthcare, the only answer is randomized clinical trial. Is it going to work? Is it the same as standard of care? Is it better or is it worse? That's the only answer. Now, an aspect of your question is, how do you even convince a clinician to even try that, right? So this is another very difficult question, and there are many people that I have talked that work in my field that, you know, they say, well, the clinician doesn't want to pay attention to me, I'm an engineer. Well, it is very important to be able to convince a clinician, and to do that, I, for instance, have a specific way I train my students. I want them to be bilingual, meaning they can speak engineering fully very well, and they can speak the clinical language. If you do not speak the clinician's language, you're going to get nowhere. Clinicians have 3 minutes to pay attention to you because they have to see the next patient. So in that 3 minutes, you have to slot your idea, and it takes really long time to develop trust. I go to clinical meetings every week, twice a week in the morning, 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm a late night person. 2 days of the week, I have to get up at like 4:30 and go to a clinical meeting, only because I want to sustain that relationship, right? We are part of the clinical team, and being there all the time, have new ideas, discussing with them, you become a source of new ideas, not like somebody like, oh, what the hell are they talking about? But they listen to you. I think it is a very important aspect of what we do is that trust that we have built, and not just in me as a scientist, but my whole team, my students, my engineers. So that's another aspect of that. That's very important.
But regarding your question, to trust in the technology in general of in artificial intelligence is a big question. It's also a complex question, because the problem, really, the problem is when you work with artificial intelligence and you only consider the performance. We were speaking today in the lunch. I remember, if we only consider the performance, if you have a high accurate system with 90%, let's suppose that in the area of medicine, here I am not expert, I am a mathematician in the origin, and artificial intelligence expert now, but in medicine you always have a probability for taking a decision about the possibilities, the final decision. Let's suppose that you have an artificial intelligence system with a performance of 0.9 or 90%. Theoretically, it's very good, because in every 10 cases, if you follow the suggestion, you take correct decisions 9 times. But on the other hand, it's not enough, because I consider that the knowledge of the expert, of the doctor, the clinical eyes, the intuition, and other aspects must produce theoretically better decisions. And the human and the doctor must improve the decision than the decision of the A system. The importance of explainability, because it's one potential technology inside of artificial intelligence that can provide to the doctor the possibility to take correct decision. If you know that the probability is 0.9, there are some experiments, for example, in the recruit persons, there are some real experiments with one error of 0.25, 1 every 4 Then, finally, the expert try to reject one decision, but randomly, because the expert has not information about the correct decision, but the expert know that one of each four is incorrect. And then there are some experiments that finally there are errors in both sides. For me, the explainability is fundamental and interpretability, because in this way the doctor can take correct decisions. For me, the best option is, okay, I have a machine, artificial machine artifact with 0.9 probability. If the doctor reach 0.95, 96, would be perfect. Of course, always will have error. The medicine is not an exact science, but we need some tools to provide to the doctor the possibility to improve the decision and to balance between the doctor intuition when the doctor considers that the option is different in regards to the advice. Because the risk in the future is that the doctor can take always the decision of the A system, because it's the best, the easy way to act. If I have an A system with high probability of correct decision, finally the risk in the future is that the doctor cannot take a different decision. And in fact, we have a problem now. No a problem. We have a challenge. In the Faculty of Medicine now, we need to introduce the new technologies, and the future doctor must learn to work with this kind of technology. And always the medicine is a science with probability in the decision, but in the future it's a science with probability in the decisions, but external artifacts that provide more and more information to the doctor. Then for me now, of course, there are two fundamental technologies inside of artificial intelligence. The safety, of course, and the protection for the humans, but in the real application now, in some areas like medicine, explainability is essential. In other cases in the future, I think that it will be so difficult for a doctor to take a decision against the A system.
So we're coming to a close in a few minutes. I'd like to just ask the panelists for one last thought or reflection, and that's basically to share with us what you're most excited about. So let's look 10 years ahead, and where do you see the most transformative impact of digital twins in biomedicine happening? What would be sort of your best bet of where it will change medicine in 5 to 10 years from now? Anybody?
I'll start. So I don't know how it is in Spain, but in US, when a doctor sits with the patient, all the patient data is in an electronic health system. And the doctor will pull down, and, oh no, the guy has hypertension, has this and that, was seen on that date. And I want to see the doctor on the screen, in the patient record, pulls down the digital twin of that patient, whether it's a heart or something else. And it is equivalent to the other data that's there. It is at that level of acceptance, at that level of accuracy and predictive capability that it is part of the clinical records together with everything that else that it's available for the patient. That's what I want to see in 10 years.
Wonderful. Anybody?
I agree, that would be fantastic. And yes, I mean, we have seen application of digital twin in so many industry sectors, and I think really application in medicine and in healthcare is probably the next big thing to see. So I'm pretty sure that we will get there at some point, despite the huge complexity of the human body, but gradually, yeah, organ by organ perhaps, or function by function, we might see evolution, or I hope we might see evolution of the digital twin models being adopted in medicine and healthcare.
Yes, also I would like to add one little thought on that. Hopefully, in 10 years, there will be more and more people will have access to health, the way we know, okay? But resources will stay the same, so more or less. So it's the scalability that digital twins offer, so the possibility to cure more people, okay? And with the same cost for the people who will provide those resources. So in some sense, I also believe that this will be, well, doesn't have to be profitable, okay? But I mean, the cost to heal a larger and larger population, because we will grow in number, and there will be a substantial increase in the number of people who will have access to this. If we don't change the way we heal people and be more technological, more accessible, I mean, in 10 years it would be a disaster. So having the same level as we have now will be a great success. And with digital twins, this can be done, in my view. But, yeah.
Thinking in Spain that we have universal medicine, universal access, for me, we have two challenges. Of course, to improve the quality and to reduce the error, but another problem is the cost of the system. We need this technology in order to maintain the current quality, the universal access, reducing the cost. Because if we increase the cost with a population older and with chronic illness, the sustainability of the system will be so difficult. And then, for me, it's fundamental to maintain the quality of the universal service, but in order to maintain this quality and the universal access, we need to reduce the cost. And I think that artificial intelligence, digital twins, and all the current digital technology is the way to have to get this equilibrium and to maintain the sustainability of the system.
Wonderful. So I'd like to thank the audience once again. Thank you so much for being here. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos.
Thank you so much for being with us tonight. It's a pleasure. And thank you for your questions. I'd like to thank the speakers for their wonderful presentations and the stimulating discussion. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much.